All right, it's 5:30, so we're called to order the study session for the City of Cherry Hills Village. Um, and for the study session tonight, we have a discussion of Allen Hutto Memorial Commons Use Policy, and this will be by Director Goldie.
Yes, good evening, Mayor and members of council. So a little background on why we're bringing this to council again. So City Council asked that staff take the use policy of Allen Hutto Memorial Commons to PTRC and the Art Commission and have them collaborate on some guidelines for the use of that space. Staff drafted the initial policy, which is Exhibit A in your packet of the study session materials. So PTRC reviewed the policy at their February 11th, and the Art Commission reviewed the policy on March 29th. So the way staff drafted the policy, it allowed uses such as musical performance, theater production, education, and celebrations. It also allowed for sales of tickets for revenue benefits for nonprofits or public entities. It prohibits for-profit activities in the space. And currently as drafted, it specifies the event hours between 8 and 8. So the commissions gave their feedback and they thought a more appropriate cutoff time for amplified events would be 9 p.m. in the summers especially. PTR wanted more specific parameters for uses, and the Art Commission thought it would be better to leave the uses more wide open until we see how the space is used. PTRC suggested, excuse me, that a rental fee be charged, and the Art Commission preferred that no rental fee be charged to start, just to see what kind of uses we get. So what staff is looking for is some feedback from council on what they feel the hours, rental fees, if we should do or not do rental fees, or if we should come up with some more descriptions of what type of events can take place in that portion of the park, or if we leave it wide open at this point. So those are the specific things, and we can answer any questions that council may have.
All right, thank you. Jay, appreciate it. I guess we can go right down the line. Al, would you like to start? Any questions?
Yeah, a couple of questions I have is, do we want to open it up to for-profit events? My sense is that we don't, number one. Number two is, has staff talked to the surrounding neighborhood to see if they have concerns about the 8 o'clock shutoff time? And the third question I had related to the deposit. I think you're showing, what, $125 deposit? And my question is that sufficient? So Jay, those are my questions. And if you want to respond to those, that'd be great.
So we haven't talked to the neighbors since we originally did the planning years back when we were planning for the entire park. And at that time, we had talked about early hours, 8 or 9 o'clock. We hadn't got specific because we had no idea, but no, we haven't reached back out to them, but we took all of that feedback from there into the consideration to make sure that we didn't have any late nights over there for amplified events. We're working on the deposit because we had a staff meeting today and talked a little bit about, across the street for the picnic shelters with the deposits and the costs to rent the picnic shelters. And right now, $125 fee, we believe will cover most of the costs. We're trying to figure out as we do this first summer, are we going to have to bring some seasonal staff in on the weekends if we're doing multiple events to clean the restrooms, to pick up trash, to make sure that the second party, if there is one, has clean facilities and everything's set up. So we're looking at what those fees should be, just to at least cover our costs of renting out these facilities.
Third question related to for-profit versus nonprofit. I don't think, and other council members may disagree, I don't think we should be opening it up to for-profit events. But those are my issues, and I'll defer to the next guy.
All right, Councilor Sheldon. You're the next
Thank you,
guy.
Mayor. Jay, just a couple of questions. I guess regarding the decibel level, you were kind enough to put Exhibit D into the packet and talk about what O1 and O2 allows for. I fear that you hold any kind of concert out there, regardless of whatever time we decide to make the shut-off time, whether it's 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, whatever it is for amplified noise, 60 decibels, I think it's real hard to make a concert work with a 60 decibel max. Are we going to be shooting ourselves in the foot if we go roll out a 60 decibel max in our zoning and have concerts go on?
I don't want to interrupt you, but you're hitting my concern on the head. 60 decibels is normal conversation level. There will be no amplified anything there. A piano is more than 60 decibels by itself. So,
well, but it's 60 decibels at the property line. So we would have to go out there with our decibel meter and play around and see what 60 decibels at the property line looks like to get a better feel for that. And maybe that's what we should do is set up one of our speakers and get code out there and have them stand all around on the property line and see how loud 60 decibels is at the property line. But I would guess that Councilor Sheldon and Mayor Pro Tem Brown are right that we may be shooting ourselves in the foot, that we may want to look at that. And I'm not sure if we'd have to change the code to allow for that, or if there's an exemption in there.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's good. And I think if we address that takes care of one of my two concerns. Al was suggesting nonprofits only, and I'm not opposed to that. But I guess I do have a question. Does that mean that if somebody is not charging a fee to come to a concert, and I wanted to go out as a private citizen, or not even a citizen of our village, and roll out there with my guitar or a piano or just a poetry reading, and invite 30 people to come out and sit around and listen? Are we going to suggest, are we saying that is allowed currently as contemplated in this policy?
Well, if I would say, in my opinion, it would not be allowed if you were trying to reserve the area and put that on, because we wouldn't allow individuals just to reserve it. But if it was open, you could go out there and play your guitar, but you wouldn't have any power or ability to have a powered amp or anything. But you could go sit out there with 25 friends and play your guitar. There's nothing stopping you if it's not rented.
Okay, so and I think that's probably the realistic answer for any of our parks, right? I mean, they're open to the public, and somebody can go out there and do that. So I assume that would hold true for somebody wanting to hold a birthday party without reserving any component of our parks. But if they wanted to go have a birthday party out there and have a comedian stand up there at the amphitheater area and have people sitting in the grass, they could do that so long as it wasn't amplified.
Correct.
Okay, that's all I have for now. Thanks, Jay.
Councilor Sheldon, just a quick follow-up. So you mentioned that on the noise issue that Jay's comments.
Rano?
You mentioned that
Go ahead, Chris.
Jay's comments were addressing one of your concerns. Which part of the response addressed your concern? That we maybe need to update the code, and that's what you were looking to see? So you're in
Yeah,
favor.
I think we need, Chris, I think we need to do something. Right now, I think this is all great, but if the intent is that the Hutto Memorial Commons is a amphitheater first and foremost, which I mean, I think if that's not its primary use, that's at least its secondary use, right? Hard to be an amphitheater if knowing that we've plumbed it with electricity and we're ready to go to put in some speakers or acoustic, or, musical instruments, and not be, like I said, shooting ourselves in the foot with our own code at 60 decibels at the PL. So I would suggest that Jay do exactly what he said, go out there with his meters and walk around the closest property line edges and plug in and have somebody with a guitar or speaking or singing into a microphone, try a few different things and see what it emits at that property line. Because right now, I just fear that this is all great, but if we can't use it because we're breaking our own zoning code, that's kind of a problem.
Yeah, no, I just was making sure that you mentioned the word intent. And if the intent, so I was trying to make sure I understood what your intent was, that we should explore ways to allow more amplified music so that it receives its full use that it was envisioned all along, as opposed to let's make sure we keep the cap on it and it doesn't upset too many folks.
Obviously, it is a fine line, right? It's a very fine line for these neighbors that live nearby. We don't want to be changing our code to crank that thing up to 100 decibels in 01 and 02 or 150, whatever it comes in at that we need to be at without consulting and coordinating that effort with our community. But I just want to make sure that we're counterbalancing the issues here, which are the issues of the community, but also what's necessary in order to make an amphitheater an amphitheater.
Understood. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilor Gallagher.
Thank you, Mayor. So I attended there were a number of different community meetings that took place and I think a very responsible job was done in gathering the information and the concerns of the immediate community members. And the two themes, not surprising, that came up over and over are light and noise. And we're obviously addressing that noise in this discussion so far. And the point is we do have to get to some happy medium where we can actually have, where people can participate. I mean, this was a wonderful gift. We spent a lot of money investing in it, and we want to be able to encourage the use of it. But big caveat, those neighbors are going to be front and center once we start having problems, and especially the Kleins and the Abrams, who are really the closest. It's Klein, right, Jay?
Klein.
Yes. Yeah, Klein. That would be just to, I'm really echoing what Dan and Katie and Al are talking about. The second thing is light. Help us understand, Jay, there's no permanent lighting out there. There were going to be bollards that were going to be portable bollards. Give us an overview of the lighting. There is no lighting, and those bollards were taken out of the plan before we went to construction and bid this. For any events that would be in the dark, we would do like we do for movie night with the battery powered luminaires, and we would have we do have portable lighting that can be used for city events. But with the restrictions on hours, we would expect that if we go to 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock, most of those events would be during summer hours when it would still be light. So we don't see a big need for lighting over there. And we feel that the temporary lighting that we can provide for our own events would be plenty to safely have people move around in that area if it did become dark. We
Okay.
still plan on
Thank-
having movie night across the street in John Mead Park because
Right.
the restrooms are right there and the pavilion. So we're hoping that the hours restriction will also keep the need for lighting down as the neighbors requested in all of those meetings.
Yes, I thank you. Help me understand the difference. The way if I fill out a permit, there's a $125 deposit, and we're talking differentiate between deposit, which you get back, and fee you don't get back. And what is the intention for the Commons?
That is one of the things we would like council to give us feedback on. Right now, the deposit is fully refundable if you've cleaned up after yourself and there's no damage due to your event. But we'd like to hear from council. Do you think we should have a fee to use this to try to recover some of our costs? Right now, the only fee that would be charged is the $25 application fee, which is charged for all of our special events permits, whether they're, at City Hall or John Mead Park or Three Pond, any of those. We are contemplating a fee for the picnic shelter rental that would be not returned in addition to the $125 deposit. But on the Allen Hutto side, we are looking for input as if council thinks we should charge a fee. So right now, the only thing in there is the refundable damage deposit, cleaning deposit, and the $25 application fee.
Jay, I've had, on the west side, we have some events that happen year after year. The Oktoberfest would probably be the most notable. And the feedback from the people who are running that locally is, gosh, we keep giving that $125 and we get it back every year. And they're not pleased with it. And I guess my question to you is, have you ever kept the money that has been deposited for that potential need to clean up?
Not that I'm aware of.
Yeah,
Laura may have a better idea. I don't think we ever have, but it's very
Don't
standard
recall.
when you're renting a picnic shelter in any park to put down a damage deposit. There, we may want to rethink like the street closings. Do we really need it for that? If that's what you're talking about, your Oktoberfest and those type of things.
yeah, it really is, Jay, more that, the reality is and we all live in communities that we all have these, these summer gatherings. Each district has, each community has their own, and people are incredibly responsible about cleaning the place up. And I guess I'd like to hear from other counselors. Is this something, and the feedback is, why do you have this thing? Yeah, and maybe we could rework it so that if there was a need and you had to spend city dollars, that no questions asked, you're gonna get billed for it. But it might avoid the administrative hassle of the deposit. This is a side question. If to Dan's point, if you want to have a party out at across the way, at what point do you have to pull a permit? Is it driven by the numbers? What is it?
Off the top of my head, I do not have that answer.
And let me just chime in here for a second, because Emma and I had a brief offline conversation about this, but I do think part of it is also if you want to ensure and guarantee, if you wanted to have a little birthday something or another, and you wanted to make sure that nobody else happened to be occupying it just because they happened to come earlier than you did, then the cost of having that predictability then would be that reservation. That's sort of regardless of size.
I see.
But you know,
Right.
I think
Thanks.
if anybody wanted to tap into the power, or you know, start amplifying it or anything like that, that's where I think some of these policies that we're talking about kick in. And so therefore that would, the impression I got was that was the intent behind then the permit process.
Great, thank you. I don't have any other questions. Thank you.
Councilor Mayor Pro Tem Brown.
Thanks. So I'm echoing sort of everyone's concerns. The conversation is always around noise and light. And my biggest concern is that I believe this policy, by relying on the current city ordinances, is setting everyone up for failure. The city, the neighbors, everything. Mike, you very astutely pointed out that, you know, everybody has their parties, and by the way, they're all breaking the law. All of those events violate this noise ordinance. The fireworks at Glenmore at 4th of July violate this noise ordinance. You will not be able to have any reasonable event. You know, 25 people talking in that space will violate the noise ordinance. So, you know, kids walking across the street from the school will violate the noise ordinance. Kids playing on the playground will violate the noise ordinance. It's just not reasonable to apply that standard all day, every day. And I think that there are a couple of ways that could be addressed. You know, I think all of us, your neighbor has a party once a year where they're kind of loud out in the backyard till 11, no big deal. They're doing it every single night, then it's a problem, right? So there's two different things. There's the sort of the quantity and the frequency. And any policy we put into place, I think, needs to sort of address both of those things. Maybe it's fine to have a movie night once a year that's, you know, a little bit louder till 10, but it doesn't happen every weekend. You know, so the space can only be reserved once a month for that purpose or something like that. You know, another thing to do would be to adjust the ordinances so that you can have higher levels during the day in parks and open space, and perhaps the number is lower at night. And I think that also applies to light, because Mike, I think you're right. You know, I know we're going to do the movie night over in the park still, but the movie night would violate the light ordinance, because 0.2 foot candles above the ambient light at 10 o'clock at night, the ambient light is 0. So any light shining onto the client's property would be a violation. And I think it sets up an unreasonable expectation that we would never be able to deliver, that nobody would ever be able to deliver. And I think the neighbors would therefore then be very justifiably upset because they were told it was going to be X and it's turning out to be Y. I just don't think anybody's being honest if you think that any event in that place would meet these criteria. So I would say, generally speaking, you know, I like the policy. I like the fact that you can raise money for a nonprofit, but not for anything else. So I'm on board with that. I think 8 p.m. is way too early. Again, I don't think we want people using it till midnight every day of the week, but I think once every now and then would be okay. And I guess it kind of depends on what that is. So I think 8 as a hard cutoff is too early. I like the fact that, you know, you have to have some pre-event meetings. I think I would also suggest, I don't know if it needs to be part of the policy or just part of our practice, but whenever events are going to be held, that we provide advance notice to the neighbors to let them know. And I think that would kind of play into, we don't really say in this policy how much, how far in advance you need to reserve this space. I think in order to be fair to the neighbors and give everyone a heads up, there probably should be some time period by which you have to, apply at least 2 weeks or something. And I think that all of those things could apply to people who are getting permits. Maybe the 8 p.m. cutoff is fine for people who are just over there using it on their own. I guess I think it's just way more complicated than this, and that we would end up in a lot of disputes with well-intentioned people if we moved forward with something that doesn't acknowledge the reality. So I guess that's my general opinion.
Councillor Wheel.
Thank you, Mayor. This time I managed to take myself off mute. A few relatively simple questions. I won't go over the ones other people have raised. I don't know that we are very clear. Maybe we are, and maybe I did not read carefully enough. But may this be rented only by residents of Cherry Hills Village, or may this be rented by people who are domiciled outside of Cherry Hills Village? My personal preference is the folks of Cherry Hills Village are paying for it, so that seems like they should receive the benefit, and I don't know how much we want beyond that. I think the question of expenses, I know that's been discussed at length, but I would look at it as we would like to come out of this cost neutral. Every event cost neutral. So it takes a certain amount of time to process paperwork, copy it, file it away. If we're going to notify neighbors, that's going to be letters, stamps, postage. I don't know that it's right to ask the taxpayers in general to support a specific event out of general funds or something like that. I realize we're not talking about big dollars. And Mike, to your point, first of all, that Oktoberfest is a spectacular event, but you got a great bunch of people, a great neighborhood. They clean up after themselves, probably cleaner than it was when they started. I don't know if that's true all the time. Not talking about your neighborhood, Mike, but talking about other events. And I think to protect the city, having a deposit that's fully refundable in the event we have to get in there and clean up some horrendous mess that some, I'm probably not going to be politically correct here, but a teen birthday party or that generated, seems like we should have some recourse in order to cover our costs. Not looking so much to make money, and there may be some setup stuff that I'm not even thinking about, whether it's providing access to electricity, other things, which are real costs on the setup and the cleanup side of things. So I would like to see a little more of a kind of a cost recovery mindset, which is where it comes from. And whether we have ever refunded anything or not is a less interesting question to me than whether we have not refunded or we have refunded things that we really would have been better keeping. In other words, we were good guys one more time. Nothing wrong with being a good guy, but I think that fair is fair. Put the cost with the cost causer. The time, the end kind of vexes me a little bit maybe it's some affliction of seasonally affected disorder or whatever. But if you look at today's sunset, it's 8:31. If no, 7:43. My mistake. At the solstice, it's 8:31 in the summertime. And I could have gone backward and forward and all the rest of it. But the point is, it seems to me that it's more of a moving target because I think that the neighbors may react more to daylight and darkness than to specific hours. We want to think about some combination of this cutoff or sunset, whichever comes first or whatever it might be. At 9 o'clock, we're going to be after sunset every single day. It won't be dark, but we'll be after sunset. So I encourage you to take a look at some flex in the hours on the close side of it. And then I'd certainly echo, I promised I wouldn't go on, but I'd certainly echo Katie's point. I read it in the notes from some of the commenters, I think at the PTRC meeting, but you know, it's kind of like, I have to go to work every day. I have kids. Is this going to be an every night affair? Because I don't think I can deal with it if it is, you know, and so I think some thought about frequency. Is it max 3 events per week, or, you know, so first of all, I have no idea what's being contemplated. Maybe I should ask the question, how many events are being contemplated and how big and so on and so forth. I kind of had the impression from the conversation earlier that there's some, let's open it up and see how this works. But I think we might want to stick a stake in the ground so that we don't end up with something going on there every single night. And that might be more than the neighbors would be okay with. I don't know exactly what that stake in the ground is, and maybe after talking to some of the neighbors, that will become more clear. Those are my comments. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councilor Wheel. Councilor Savabi.
Thank you, Mayor. Randy, I think a few pieces of paper might have covered your microphone the last couple minutes of your talk. We heard you, but it was a little bit hard. I think everybody, summarized what I had in mind very nicely. And I think there is quite a bit of consensus in terms of some of the questions or concerns. Noise and light, I think, for me also, is something we need to get more clarity. We want to make sure that it's practical and people can use it. And so noise and light, I think, Director Goldie, you got sort of the direction to go, and we need to, wait to hear from you in terms of what you find out or what your recommendation would be that makes it practical. In terms of nonprofit, I'm in agreement with that. We don't want anybody to make money off this. We do want to encourage people to use this, obviously. But I want to talk a little bit about fees and deposits. I think the deposit that we request should be more of an event or size driven. If somebody has an event and the whole purpose of deposit, the way I look at it is, if somebody really goes and messes up the property beyond what the fee covers, and I will talk about the fees a little bit, at least my input on that the deposit should be enough to manage repairing the problem, the issue. So I think that, in my opinion, $125 flat deposit is not maybe the best way to go about it. I think this should be size driven. I'm not saying to make it complicated to say for every individual, you need a $10 deposit. I'm not saying that, but it got to be something like in the intervals of, less than 20, less than 40, less than 60 people, whatever we want to come up with that is reasonable. So in the event that there is damage to the property, we can at least be maybe not fully, at least partially covered. So my recommendation is to look into that, what that number would be. And I would say we also want to, the $125 deposit, or that's the average. Now it's going to be higher or lower depending, I think, on the size. We need to really see if there was damage done. I think we need to come up with a practice that, I don't want to create more paperwork and work for the staff, but if we're having for the larger events, maybe not for somebody that has 10 or 20 people in there, but for larger events, for small concert, we really need to go and assess if there was damage done and if that deposit will need to be fully refunded or not. In terms of fees, I'm fully on board. I think Randy summarized that very nicely. Look, some of the people in the village, they're never going to use it, and some people will want to use it every week. And I don't think it's fair for the people that never use it to tell them to go ahead and pay for the cleanup. So I think the fee should be set up in such a way that it will take care of the cleanup. So the deposit is in case of damages, but the fee will cover the general cleanup that needs to be done, or general repairs that needs to be done after the event. Other than that, that's and by the way, I do like, Randy, you brought up the idea that you like to see this really be open and used for Cherry Hills Village residents, and I like to echo that as well. To me, again, our taxpayers are paying for this, and I like to see for them to be the ones that are utilizing it. So, and by the way, whatever we put in place, most likely we're going to get 90% right, and there might be 10% that we need to revisit after about a year of use to modify it, and that's okay, because we're in a learning process at what people want to use this. I think we're going to know. I mean, we all look at it from our own perspective. We talked about birthday parties, playing the guitar, the concert. Who knows what people, once you open it up, what people want to use it for. So I say, we keep close eyes on it, and if we need to modify things, we will modify it. That's all. Back to you.
Thank you, Councilor Safavi. Hey, good discussion. I have a couple of thoughts, and I've talked to some folks, and I like the discussion about what Councilor Wheel said about, I think the times it's impossible to get the times right, for 6, 8 p.m. or whatever it is. What other municipalities do is dawn to dusk, and for their parks. And I've always thought that we should, I've never understood our 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. park thing. So I would be totally in favor of revisiting that and discussing that. The other advantage of a dawn to dusk is that it's easy for our police. It's easy to patrol. It's an easy message for residents about, when the park is open, when it's not. I would exempt the city from that. So the city could have its movie night, and then I'd probably put in a special permission. So if somebody wants to do it, a stargazing or something like that, they could do it as well. But just as a rule, I'd be open to revisiting our ordinance 6 a.m. to 11 p.m. opening parks, because it's never made any sense. I think this is a good time to do it. Also, at the same time, revisit the no alcoholic beverages. I think that's probably good, but I think we should have an exemption for our city. If we have a party or, like our event that's coming up for the birthday for the city, for the village, having the ability to serve wine in our parks, I think would be good. I would only allow it for exemption for the city, though, I think, as I'm thinking about it. I'd also revisit what is 11-390, which says you can't place a tent, a table, a bench, or any structure, anything in a park. I mean, we violate that all the time. I mean, clearly you want to be able to put up a table or a tent. I mean, they go up. So, this is to Katie's point, we have provisions in our code that just won't allow what we're envisioning, I think, as what the amphitheater is going to be doing. So I'm open to revisiting those things. I also thought someone mentioned about how many people do you have to have. Right now, under our current procedures, there's no limit at all. You have to have, everybody has to have a limit if you want to reserve it. I would suggest that we have a number. So any group, say any group of more than 25 must obtain a permit. Any group of less than 25 may obtain a permit, and they could then reserve it and have it for themselves. And following up on what Councilor Sheldon was saying about how you could have it. And then, of course, if you want, these are parks. If you want to go and use them and nobody else has reserved it, you can use them anytime. That's the way it works. But I think for reserving it makes sense to me that or you could make it 50. I mean, because at 50, you have to give proof of insurance for your events. So that's another bright line place to kind of put that line. I agree with, I wouldn't phrase it in terms of nonprofit or for-profit, because, you know, HOAs are nonprofits, and we could go out and make money and have a yard sale. So that we don't want to allow that. So I would say, I would use what our code talks about and say, you know, no commercial concessions. That's already defined in our code. You know, that means basically nothing for monetary gain. And that would apply to nonprofits as well as for-profit entities, just, you know, no monetary gain in anything they're doing. And I do agree with all the noise comments. I mean, clearly 60 decibels is so low, it's a conversational level. So that's, you know, I agree, you know, that Jay should go out there and see what it would look like. I think you could probably have discussions and conversations there that wouldn't go over 60 decibels, but boy, the property line is really close. So we just need to see. I'd also, you know, we need to think about at least residents should have priority in reservations, and certainly the city should, whether we're going to allow others to do it or whether the city attorney, I don't know whether he has a view on that. I suppose we can, you know, say no, only residents. I think the advantage of residents too, and this is to Councilor Gallagher's point, is if we have residents and know who they are, you know, they're the ones who are answerable for any damage that happens. And it's been my experience from our HOA, because we ran out the Buell all the time, that we did this deposit stuff, you know, lots of money, and we never collected it. And it wasn't necessary because we knew who they were, right? So we could go get them. And I think as long as people live in our village and we know who they are and they sign on the line saying that they'll be personally responsible, I think that's all you really need. And so I kind of agree with Councilor Gallagher on that it's just that 125 is just something that kind of is a bureaucratic thing that it keeps it paid all the time and time again, and nobody ever, it doesn't serve a purpose. I think all it really needs is, you know, is some, you know, residents to actually sign on the line saying, I agree to be personally liable for all this unless it's fixed, if there's any damage. That's, you know, that's what we found has been successful in our HOA. And then as far as the uses too, I would not limit it to these, and I don't think it does, but I would say instead of such as, I would say including but not limited to musical theater productions. I mean, like, you know, Councilor Sheldon said, if you want to have a birthday, you know, reading or something else that doesn't fall within here, that was fine. If there's a need to limit it later, you know, okay. But I think you can give a general sense for what it is, but I wouldn't limit it necessarily to those uses. If people want to have some other use, go up and read books or have some other kind of a game or chess tournament or something, you know, I think we should allow that. So I wouldn't put any limitations on the use. There's nothing that requires us to limit the uses. So anyway, those are my thoughts and comments, and open it up to anybody else.
I have a couple. Yeah, Mayor, I have a couple more that have kind of generated here during our conversation. I wasn't around in 2013 involved in the city at the time when this gift was given to the city, but some of you were, and I have not read on any of the documentation where the gift was given, but do we have any obligation, either written or just the right thing to do, to share this policy with the Huttos and Niedermans?
Don't believe we have an obligation to share the policy with them. There were some stipulations in the gift, and those have been met.
And I can speak, this is Laura. Emily has contacted the Huttos and Niedermans, I believe, with this latest version. I'm not sure if she's heard back, but we are trying to get some feedback from them on it.
Perfect. That's great. And then the only other thing, you know, that we might want to think about as far as contacting people would be possibly, I don't know, it opens a box I'm not sure I want to open, but possibly contacting the immediate neighbors and getting some feedback from them. But I don't know where you draw the line. Is it the very touching neighbors, or is it 2 neighbors deep, or is it 4 neighbors deep? So I would maybe let that become a conversation among staff. If that, I don't feel strongly about the neighbors, but we also don't need our neighbors writing policy for the city, but I do appreciate input from neighbors when provided. And then, so I'm hearing, if we do back to the fee, if we implement a fee more than the $25 nominal fee that's there now, and I'm not talking about the deposit, but a fee, I just want to keep us aware that if I had a choice between reserving something that maybe doesn't get used very often, which I don't know if it will, but reserving it and paying a $100 fee or a $250 fee or whatever it may be to cover the costs associated with running it, or not paying the fee and just taking my chances and inviting everybody out there for that birthday party. I might choose to just take my chances, invite everyone out there for the birthday party. And if the amphitheater's full, we'll go across the street and go to the pavilion. I guess my point is, if we do a fee, let's not make it an onerous fee that is it's going to give somebody a moment of pause about actually signing up and reserving it. Also on the reservation piece, just so I'm 100% clear, the only way you get access to our electricity, and that's really the only thing that we're hanging that we're keeping it under lock and key, literally, is the electricity, correct? So the only way you get electricity to amplify or have sound or light or whatever is if you reserve it. Is that correct?
That is correct, yes.
Okay. And then my final comment after hearing this dialogue, which I think has been super helpful, and hopefully staff's getting questions answered. I wouldn't complicate this. I know that there's a million different ways we could write and rewrite and think and overthink. But I like what Afshin said. Let's try to keep it simple and get it out there and see what happens for a while and test it out for a year. And if we need to tweak our policy in 6 months or a year or 2 years because it's just not working and things are different, great. That means we were successful in getting so much activity going that it's actually needing some changes. That actually would be a success for us if we had to make some changes to our policy. So that's it for my follow-up. Thanks.
Mayor, can I add one more item to this quickly? Look, I mean, as I think Director Goldie, as you're looking at the lights and the sound situation, I think when it comes to fees, I want to go back again to what Randy said, is that we want to break even. We don't want to make money off this, but we don't want to use taxpayers' money to pay for maybe a group of or a team that uses it all the time. We want to break even. Basically, the fee should cover the cost of maintaining it. And it would be interesting. You don't need to do a massive calculation, but just a back of an envelope calculation when you respond back to us around the light, around the sound, to say, look, it costs $20 to maintain this, $50 to maintain it, or some number, because I don't know where the $25 came from. So going back to what Councilor Sheldon is saying, we don't want people to say, oh, I don't want to use it because the fee is high. At the same time, I really don't know what is a high or a low fee. So it would be nice to know what you recommend in terms of the cost, the fee would be, not to make it complicated. That's all.
Okay. And we've been looking at what others are charging, Inglewood, Littleton, Greenwood, and looking at that. The one issue that came up that I'll have to have staff do a little research on, we accepted grants from Arapahoe County and Urban Drainage. I don't know, I'll have to read through those. If that limits our ability to say only residents can reserve this, I'm not sure, but it's something that we'll have to look at to make sure that, we did use those funds from those other organizations that are more metro wide. So we will take a look at that.
I think you're right, Director Goldie, for the OSTAB money, Arapahoe County money, that's true. And I think that's why Greenwood Village has, that their residents have priority, but they don't exclude others, non-residents from reserving, which I don't think happens that much, but I think that's the way they handle it.
Yeah, okay.
And just one
Right.
more quick point.
Well, we're getting really close. If it's really quick, because we have to get off pretty soon, so Laura can
Yep.
reset.
30 seconds. I think, look, I don't know how our forms are set up in terms of, it would be really interesting to start generating some data for us. You know, on your form, I'm not sure if you have a little box that it says party, concerts, whatever, 4 or 5 categories, because I think that data after a year or 2 years, and it might be limited, it's going to really help us as a council to decide if we're going to go ahead and build the next park, if we're going to go ahead and modify a park, what is it that people in the village like to do? What do they actually use this one small space for that we can maybe use it as some good data? That's all. Back to you, Mayor.
All right, thanks, everybody. Unless there's something that really wants to be said, I think we need to have Laura. Laura, do you have enough time to reset everything for us?
Yes, we'll get everyone in for the regular meeting and get going for that.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, if I could just say one thing real quick. I do think it's advisable for us to go out and do the noise measurements as we discussed. I think it is an opportunity for us to talk to the adjacent neighbors, even with the sound, the decibel readers there on site. It's also a chance to get some informal feedback about some of these other issues. So I actually think we might be able to sort of kill multiple birds with one stone. Not that our neighbors are our birds and we're killing them, but so I think we can have a good plan of attack there to really address a lot of what council's saying. I do want to say that some of these issues that are brought up are bigger than just the Alan Hutto Memorial policy. So when we bring something back, it may not have, for example, alcohol in it. But I do think there's a chance for us to customize some stuff for Alan Hutto. For example, we could exempt out noise standards that only apply to Alan Hutto. The last thing I'll say, Mayor Stewart, I love the dawn to dusk suggestion. I think that is spot on. It has some other secondary benefits because it also helps address the lights concern that everybody already has. So I just wanted council to be aware. I think that's a great suggestion.
I think it might be. I think the neighbors might appreciate that too. If we come to them and say this is going to be part of the plan, it would give them a sense of comfort.
Agreed. I just wanted to get. I think that we should run with that personally. So I just wanted to get that on in the meeting. So that's all I have.
Thanks, everybody. Good discussion. We'll reconvene at 6:30.
We'll bring this policy back.
Laura, do you want us to stay on?
You stay on here. Feel free to mute and turn off your video just for the interim here before we start the regular meeting, but do please stay on.
Thanks.
Thank you. Mark and Jan, do you want to make sure your audio and video still work now that we're getting ready for the regular meeting?
Laura, I'm on.
Great.
Video's not working. Let's see. There we go.
There we go. I see you.
Hey, Mark.
Oh, Jeremy. How are you?
Nice to see you virtually. Doing well.
It's snowing here in Indiana. Can you believe it? You guys sent that storm out here.
You're welcome.
I don't see Jan. Is she on?
She's on the list, but it looks like she's still muted and doesn't have her video on. Oh, there we go. There she comes. Hi, Jan.
Hi. Hi, Jan, Jeremy, and Mark.
Is that Chief?
Chief has got her computer working.
Ah,
How are you, Chief?
Good. Jeremy, nice to see you. Hi, Miss Jan.
Hi, Chief.
Commander Weathers, do you want to check your audio real quick? I saw you unmute, but I can't hear you.
Uh-oh.
And we still can't hear you, Pat.
Next to if you see all your little icons, there's a little mute microphone icon and there's a little caret next to it that expands some options. And one of them is test speaker and microphone. You can try that to make sure you have the right speaker and microphone selected. If not, then maybe there's some other options on there. You can try some different ones.
My wife has her grandmother named Janzi on there.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's fine.
I think it's perfect.
Is that okay?
I can change it for you if you want.
Could you put Jan Harrison Griffin? Thank you.
So did it warm up in Colorado today?
Not really.
Pat, if none of that is working, if you want to call in, you can keep your video going on your computer, but then also call in.
Laura, I'm trying something with him.
Okay.
Give me 1 second.
Okay, great. Thank you.
So Laura, I want to see if you can hear Pat. We're going to do a test.
Okay.
Go ahead, Pat.
Hi, Laura, can you hear me?
Yes, there's some feedback, but.
I think if we can put up with just a little bit, well, maybe not, huh?
Yeah, it's probably going to be better for him to call in.
Okay. Well, there's my technical prowess for the evening, people. I'm out.
Russell, I think we lost Al. He's trying to rejoin. And we don't have any audience participation, just so you know.
Thank you.
And we're trying to get Commander Weathers' audio to work. Pat, can you hear us?
Yes, we're back on again. Sorry about that.
Okay, wonderful. Thanks.
That's great. It's exactly 6:30 too. I think we have everybody on. Is that right, Laura?
I don't think we have Counselor Blum by audio yet. He's still having some issues.
Oh, there he is. Can you hear us, Al?
Mayor, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Okay.
Good. You can hear us, I take it. All right. Well, then let's call to order the Tuesday, April 20th meeting of Cherry Hills Village City Council. Regular meeting. It's 6:30. Laura, could you take a roll, please?
Counselor Safavi?
Here.
Counselor Wheel?
I had to be here.
Counselor Brown?
Here?
Counselor Gallagher?
Here.
Counselor Sheldon?
Here.
Counselor Blum?
Here.
Great. We have full attendance. So we'll move on to the first item on our agenda, which is the Police Foundation presentation. And this is a fun item. Chief Tovria, would you like to start?
Yep, I'd be honored to. I'd like to start my introduction here with a quick quote. A gentleman knows his actions carry more weight than any words spoken. And I wanted to say that when it comes to this particular topic we're going to discuss tonight, which is the Police Foundation. As you all know, the speaker that's coming up was a member of City Council for 8 years with Cherry Hills Village, has a deep knowledge of the village and a lot of issues that are going on. I first met Mark when I applied for this job almost 9 years ago, here coming up at the end of the month. He was involved in the panel that was the citizen panel. And as I recall the story, no one invited me to sit down. So I paced like a caged puma, I would call myself at the time, and walked back and forth, probably to the point of maybe irritating some people, but they managed to listen to me. And somebody had a sense of humor and offered me a great job, which I'm very happy to have. But not too long after I took the job, Mark asked me about a police foundation. And at the time, I think most of you probably know, we had a little bit of work to do in the police department, a real solid police department, but nonetheless, there were people to hire and things to get done. And as we all know, you can just keep getting more busy and more busy. But Mark never gave up on this idea of a police foundation. And so without further ado, I'd like to introduce Mark Griffin. I know he's going to introduce a couple of other people to talk about our newly founded Cherry Hills Village Police Foundation. So please take it away, Mr. Griffin.
Thank you, Chief, for that embellished introduction. Members of staff, City Council, and Mayor Stewart, I would like to take this opportunity to announce the formation of the Cherry Hills Village Police Foundation. Gives me great gratitude to be able to say that at this time. With us today, I have two of our officers, Jan Harrison Griffin and Jeremy Abelson. So if we have any questions later on, they can help field the questions. This has been a goal of mine, as Chief alluded to, starting from the 8 years that I served on City Council all the way up to present. This foundation is charged with the sole purpose of helping our Cherry Hills Village Police Department with the necessities to ensure their health, their safety, and their well-being. That support will include educational programs, scholarships, equipment, and assistance to the personnel and the families of the Cherry Hills Police Department. Although completely separate from the Cherry Hills Village itself, we will work closely with Cherry Hills Village Police Department and its chief, Michelle Tovray, to help individuals and the police department the people that keep us safe. This was a collaborative effort of many individuals. I don't have time to mention all that contributed, but first I would foremost like to thank Chief Tovre for her extensive help and support, to include, and I don't want to overlook this, her artistic talent in designing our logo and challenge coin. Next, the two officers of the Cherry Hills Village Police Foundation, my lovely wife, Jen Harrison Griffin, and Jeremy Abelson, who've been tirelessly working to help us get this put together. Thanks also goes out to Thomas Doherty and Bill Mahaffey of Lewis, Roca, Rothgerber, and Christie for their legal expertise in founding our 501c3. Our website is nearly complete with Jeremy's guidance, and he's done a fabulous job in that area, an area that I'm technically challenged on. And we are accepting charitable donations to our 501c3, the Cherry Hills Village Police Foundation. Mayor Russell Stewart has kindly offered to be our first donor, and we gratefully accept it. Our mission has been accomplished, and now the real work will begin. That's it in a nutshell, gentlemen and ladies. May I entertain any questions?
Maybe to start, Mark, explain that this is similar to what Greenwood Village has, and maybe say a word about that and your meetings with those folks.
Well, Greenwood Village kind of led the charge a few years back when I was on city council, and that intrigued me a lot. I've talked with obviously Tom Doherty, who is on city council in Greenwood Village, and he was instrumental in getting Greenwood started up. So we've used a lot of their experience and their mistakes and their successes and that sort of thing to structure our documents and that sort of thing. And it's been invaluable. We're still in the developmental stage and working on our website, but we're excited to be kind of in their shadow, as if you will. We followed their guidance a lot on it, and hopefully we missed a lot of pitfalls or whatever. So they were very helpful, and we are going to enlist some of the help of their bookkeeping staff that has experience in that area.
I'd add one thing to that also. We currently have a 3-person board, just everybody on this call. The plan is to expand that board sometime in the near term, probably to 7 or 9 people that will also be good representations of the organization, but also very helpful on the fundraising front.
And Mark, can you comment on how you'll distribute funds?
How we will distribute funds? Basically will be dictated by the feedback that we get from the police department, where their needs are, and whether the budget of the city itself will be able to cover those needs. There are a lot of expensive things coming up, body cameras and body armor and that sort of thing that may or may not be covered by the budget of Cherry Hills Village. We'd also like to come up with some programs, educational programs, personal development programs, scholarships, and that sort of thing that we will allocate as funds become available.
Thank you.
Well, thank you all for what you're doing. I think it's great work, and I appreciate your efforts and what you're doing. I've been anxiously awaiting somebody to bring it forward for several years. So thank you again. Do you have a budget or a projection for year one of what you are shooting to raise?
We did have to produce a 3-year budget, which we kept very, very conservative. And our initial goal is to raise $30,000 right out of the chute. I don't think we'll have a problem with that, and we'll probably go up by 20 to 50% each year thereafter. one of the other things that we're going to work on in the future are fundraising events to bring awareness to the Police Foundation and obviously raise some funds.
Just
What are
my
some of the
note,
other
maybe this
things-
is over exuberant, but I think we're going to go a lot bigger than that year one.
Yeah.
Year one.
I hope so.
A much faster ramp. You know, in all sincerity, any resident that I've spoken to has so much gratitude for the work that the police department does and what the department under chief does. So I think this is going to be a pretty easy sell, and I think in light of everything that's going on in the world, I think people are going to want to make a statement of support. And so like I said, I think this should be a pretty easy sell. So I'm personally setting our target a little bit higher.
The past 4 years, that we have adopted our budgets, our city budgets, and looking at the police force, I don't think there's been a year where we have not provided for what Chief has asked for her department. So I guess it begs the question for me, what are the other kind of programming or events or services or materials, supplies? What are the other kinds of things, if the city is able to continue to provide funding to match a balanced budget with the department's requested funds? What other kind of services or materials would you guys be envisioning using the foundation proceeds for?
Maybe I can jump in too, Chief, and answer. You can answer that by saying we've had a history of anonymous donations and explain what some of those have gone for.
So thank you. That's what I was going to start off with. We have had some anonymous donations in the past, and we've used those for ballistic vests. I did not purchase one for everyone. What we did was made a supply of, I'm sorry, I got distracted. I'll get back. I'd like to make sure that we all have, that each officer has that available to them, along with a ballistic helmet. That is one thing. And those types of equipment needs, Councilor Sheldon, do come up from time to time. There's very few things, again, like you're saying, that the city has ever said we could not cover, but it's nice to have that reality come up. And I'll give you an example. We have body cameras coming up. So a gift that we were given last year, I worked with the city manager and the finance director, Jessica, to put that in an escrow account, because I'm looking to budget for body cameras in 2022. I do not know what the price tag is going to be of that. And that mainly comes not necessarily from the camera itself, but it comes from the storage that you need from the cloud and things like that. And so I just don't know what that looks like. Another area that I think we can use this for is the city has always been very generous with regard to my training budget. I think this gives us an opportunity, although I'm very proud of the fact we do many things in-house now. We have a lot of certified instructors, and I think that's great career development for all of them. But it might allow us to bring in some more seasoned people in different studies, whether it's anti-bias policing. I'm not going to think of the doctor's name that I just watched something that Catherine Descharmes sent out the other day with regard to what's going on in the world. She did a presentation for CIRSA, and my apologies, but it would be amazing to bring a speaker of that caliber in for our in-service type of thing. And then lastly, I really see this as as this foundation is really a part of a team that has to do with the entire city, but just in a slightly different way. In other words, we'll have a budget. We can talk to the foundation about the budget, but if another city department has something very large coming in, then the police department maybe can look to offset certain things, not all the time, but certain things about what we do to be able to share in that, maybe this won't be just seen as just simply police in general, but when you help the whole city, you help the police department. So I just think there's a lot of layers that we haven't even really thought about yet. I'm very close with Chief Varney over at Greenwood Village, and actually I'm going to be seeing him tomorrow, and I'm sure I'll have some conversations about what that looks like, because I know that from time to time he will report to council about what's happening with the foundation, along with some of the things that they're thinking about doing. So I hope I didn't take up too much time, but those are a few things that I see happening.
That's great.
One other thing that I think is coming to the fore here, particularly with what's going on right now on the national scene, is the breakthroughs in law enforcement for the use of non-lethal force. And some of that development stuff is extremely expensive, and hopefully, we never have to use lethal force. But there are developments in that area, and I can foresee us trying to stay very current with the latest in that regard, and that would be an expensive undertaking.
Chief,
well, thanks again for everything you guys are doing. I'm excited to see this get launched. That's all.
Just a quick comment, Chief. I think I'm so excited. I'm just sitting here and thinking about 2 years ago, a year and a half ago, whenever it was that you and I we met with the Greenwood Village Chief, and I remember we're scratching our head, and I'm looking around, like, we're saying, who's going to go ahead and lead this team? And I hear the name Mark Griffin. It's like, you need to call Mark Griffin. So Mr. Griffin, I think it goes back to a year and a half, 2 years ago, to be honest with you, with COVID. I don't know when was it that I actually called you. And
I don't know. It was quite a while ago.
A while ago. So I am so happy and excited that you did accept to work with Chief and recruit a good team to go ahead and lead this effort. I have maybe a 1 minute sort of a statement I want to make, and to our folks at our village, that we're fortunate that we can all go to our routine daily life, go to that every day at Cherry Hills Village. We sleep peacefully in our beds at night, and this is because we have a small but very effective police team here in the village. I've managed to, just as I'm looking at the way Chief is managing this team, they're effective. They're doing preventing policing, proactive policing, community policing. And I'm happy that our city recognizes the value of safety to our community, and in return, has decided to set up this foundation. So this is great. So please support it and contribute whatever you can. If it's $10, if it's $1,000, whatever that you can, and show our support to our police officers. So with that, again, thank you, Mr. Griffin and Chief and everybody else for setting this up. Thank you.
You're welcome. It was a collaborative effort. I don't want to take all the credit. There were a lot of people that worked very hard to get this to this point. So thank you.
All right. Oh, Councilor Wheel has his hand raised.
Thank you, Mark. Jan, terrific. This is the first I've really seen of the.
Hey, Randy, I'm sorry. Randy, sorry to interrupt you. We can barely hear you. I don't know if you've got your mic covered or something.
No, there's nothing on my PC. Maybe there's some volume adjustment that I may have.
Actually, that's better, Randy, when you're closer. So
well, it's better, but he's real close to the microphone.
Yeah, well,
he's a handsome guy.
There we go. Okay,
just speak a little louder.
Sure, we'll hope that works. Anyway, first I've seen of this, terrifically impressive, really is. And Jeremy, you're new to me, but it's really fine work, and I think it's going to do some great stuff for the police department over the long haul. But then again, what would I expect out of a couple of people from Columbus, Indiana, and District 1 and all of that, Now, very, very well done. I'm very impressed.
You're welcome.
Councilor Blum has his hand up. You need to take yourself off mute, though, Al.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, I apologize. I've got the internet going in and out here. I want to again thank all three of you for the work and you've done on this. And I think Dan asked my goals. So ask my question. So I just want to express my appreciation. I'm coming in and out on the internet, so that's why I wasn't able to say anything. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Blum. All right. Don't see any other hands raised, but I think clearly we have a. Thank you very much. Great job, great work. Former council member Griffin, terrific. Thank you for taking the charge. This wouldn't have gotten done without Mark taking the lead and doing it. It just doesn't get done. I mean, you have to have somebody who says, I'll do this and follow up and get it done with the lawyers who are a pain in the neck, or great, sometimes a pain in the neck. Sometimes what they give you don't work. So, but thank you for taking the time and taking your time to get this done. That's
our pleasure. And we look forward to working with the city to benefit all concerned.
Same here. All right.
I'll say one thing. I am really excited about this, and I go full board in a fundraising mode in regard to something that I so believe in. I've known Chief for years and so impressed with her and her team, and I'm really excited about launching this. So if any of you have any questions, call any of us anytime.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. We really appreciate it. All right. Thanks so much. You can
Thank
stay or
you.
you can get off. You don't need to sit around for the rest of this if you don't want to.
We're dismissed. Thank you.
Oh, come
Thank
on,
you very
Mark,
much.
you want to stay for another city council meeting? You know it.
We were laughing about that this evening before the call, and I've had enough excitement in that regard.
But I can't elbow you anymore because you're not sitting right next to me.
Thank you for saying that, Katie. I appreciate that. I told him that too today.
All right.
Thank
All right,
you all.
everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Good night.
Good night.
All right. We have no audience participation and no reports. So consent agenda, item 6, there's A, B, and C. Does anyone wish to have anything removed from the consent agenda? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
I move to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
A motion and second. Any more discussion? Hearing no discussion, let's have a roll call.
Counselor Safavi,
Yes.
Counselor Wheel,
Yes.
Counselor Brown,
Yes?
Counselor Gallagher,
Yes.
Counselor Sheldon,
Yes.
Counselor Blum. Al, are you there?
Yes.
Thank you.
Good job. All right, that passes unanimously. Next is on our agenda is item 8, unfinished business, public hearing, Council Bill 3, Series 2021, repealing and reenacting Article 1 of Chapter 8 of the Municipal Code, entitled Model Traffic Code. And this is a second and final reading, public hearing, and we have Commander Weathers. Are you with us?
Yes, sir, I am. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. You're coming through loud and clear, so you have the floor.
Well, good for that. Hey, I apologize, everyone, for my technical ineptness, but good evening, Mr. Mayor and members of council. I come before you this evening seeking approval of Council Bill 3, Series 2021, regarding adoption of the Model Traffic Code. This code is a revised edition of the 2010 Model Traffic Code that the police department is currently using. The Model Traffic Code is designed to ensure that basic driving rules and regulations are uniform statewide for the protection of Colorado drivers and pedestrians. The city clerk has ensured that all publication requirements set by state statute and city ordinance have met all compliance regulations. There have been no inquiries from the public or changes to Council Bill since the first reading on March 16th, 2021. Staff is recommending approval on second and final reading of Council Bill 3, Series 2021, concerning the adoption of the 2020 edition of the Model Traffic Code for Colorado with noted revisions. And on a quick note, I'd like to thank the city clerk, city attorney and her associates, and Chief Tovray for all the guidance, patience, and advice they provide and extended to me during the completion of this project. I will gladly answer any questions council has.
Thank you, Commander Weathers. I'll just throw it open to anybody. Raise a hand or go off mute. Councilor Gallagher.
Just a quick practical question. When big trucks are not allowed to go through our village, heavy vehicles, and yet we know that takes place, I guess practically, how do you deal with that stuff? Where they're shortcut, they're making shortcuts. They're like any driver, right? They're looking for the shortest route, and they're coming into the village and out of the village. Is that against the law? It's per our.
Pat, do you want me to take that one?
Yeah. No, you can, Mr. Goldie, that's for sure. But yes, under the model traffic code, we have traffic ordinances that govern restricted streets use. There has to be posted in the streets, and Mr. Goldie can jump in on that one a little better than I can. But yes, we do have enforcement laws on the books, and especially in this model traffic code, that we can go in and enforce that particular violation when necessary.
I would add to that, when you see a posted sign that says 8 or 10,000, no vehicles over 8 or 10,000, that's for vehicles that are not doing business in the city. The model traffic code and the CRS have an axle weight restriction. So if someone's building a house and a lumber truck comes in, I believe it's 23,000 pounds per axle. The hard part is who is cutting through the city, who is doing business in the city, who is cutting through the city. And the police cannot stop every vehicle that's a large vehicle and say, what address are you doing business at? Now, if they see a number of trucks that are staying on Quincy and just going straight through and heading to the tech center, then yes, they can do something. But it's very hard to try to figure out who is not. It's that the no vehicles over a gross weight signage doesn't have anything to do with the actual legal weight of a vehicle, just large commercial vehicles that are not doing business in the city are not supposed to be cutting through on those streets.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Commander Weathers? Doesn't look like it, so I'll entertain a motion then.
We have to open the public hearing first.
Oh, this is a public hearing, excuse me. So let's open it up for a public hearing. Yes, I have 6:58. We'll open it up for public hearing, and I think there's nobody present. Is that correct?
Correct.
So they'll immediately close the public hearing without any public speaking, and at 6:59. So now, any further discussion or any motions?
I move to approve Council Bill 3, Series 2021, a bill for an ordinance of the City of Cherry Hills Village repealing and reenacting Article 1 of Chapter 8 of the Cherry Hills Village Municipal Code entitled Model Traffic Code Concerning Vehicles and Traffic, adopting by reference the 2020 edition of the Model Traffic Code for Colorado with certain amendments, and adopting penalties for violations thereof on second and final reading.
Second.
A motion and second, motion by Mayor Pro Tem Brown, second by Councilor Wheel. Any further discussion? Hearing none. Laura, could you please take a roll call?
Counselor Safavi?
Yes.
Counselor Wheel?
Yes.
Counselor Brown?
Yes.
Counselor Gallagher?
Yes.
Counselor Sheldon?
Yes.
Counselor Blum? Al, are you there?
You're muted,
Yeah,
Al.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Sorry, I didn't have any questions.
Do you vote?
Do you
Do
vote?
you approve?
But am I back on?
Vote
Yeah,
time.
you're back on. Do you?
Am I back on?
We just took a vote. Al, are you in favor of it?
Oh. Yes.
There you go.
Okay.
Pass unanimously.
Mayor, if you wouldn't mind, I just wanted to say really quick that that everyone that Commander Weathers thanked. That was very kind of him, but quite frankly, he had to rodeo all of us into reviewing, agreeing, looking at, re-looking at, and all kinds of stuff. So everyone that he thanked, quite frankly, he was the one that coordinated it all. And I'd just like to make sure that you all know that and thank him for this. This is a big deal for us to get through. It's been on the books for a while. It couldn't have gotten done without Pat for sure, and definitely our city attorney. So just real quick kudos and thanks for the time.
Thanks. Thank you again, Commander Weathers. We really appreciate the work.
Thank you.
All right, moving on to reports. I have a few things. It was actually kind of a busy week. I'll start off. There's the Unitarian Church. You probably have heard of that. Their issue with the potentially taking in some parking for homeless folks. There has been no application filed, and I'll let the city manager speak to it because he knows more than I. But there is a Zoom tomorrow, and if you don't have that, I think maybe if we haven't circulated it, Chris, we probably should, so people can. I think it's open to anybody to Zoom in. I can't make it. I have a conflict. But it would be good to watch. I know that the staff is going to be on that soon. April 12th, I met with the Arapahoe County Reauthorization Committee again to discuss the form of the likely ballot questions that's going to, extend the sales tax. I guess the real questions for that committee are the recommendations to the commissioners about how long. I mean, in the past, it's been for a set time. Are they going to, is it going to make it longer time, or is it going to be permanent? And then also some modifications on the use to allow some of the funds to be used. Right now, it's heavily weighted towards acquisition of new property versus maintenance of existing county property. So we're talking about some modifications of that. And then also there is a consulting firm that's been retained, and we'll be going and taking surveys and doing some polling to see what people are interested in. But basically, from everything we know now, it's a very popular program, and the public is very supportive when they're explained what it does. And it's important for us because we've actually used more than our share in a lot of ways of that money. Cherry Hills Village, we're a big user of those funds. I also met on April 13th with the Budget Management Committee of the CML. I'm on that committee. One thing that makes it easier for our city now is we've abandoned all the dues, the complicated dues rebate that we used to have. So now it's just going to be one dues assessed. And actually the CML is ironically in pretty good shape because we didn't have to put on the annual convention for the CML. So that saved a lot of money. CML is in good shape, and our amounts, I think we've already paid, and I think all the cities have already paid their dues. April 13th, I also met with I'm a member of the Transportation Mobility Committee of the Metro Mayor's Caucus, and we spoke and talked about recommending a position to the Metro Mayor's Caucus to the legislature. The legislature is coming down, and this bill is expected to drop that will be for infrastructure for the state money, with fees and on gasoline and a sort of other things of about, and then a total of $3 billion over time, the transportation bill. The Metro Mayor's Caucus has specific concerns with making sure that some of that money is directed towards helping the metro municipalities comply with the air quality attainment standards, particularly. There's really not much money in there for that because we're out of compliance with ozone and others, and unless we do something in the metro area, it's the federal government's going to. So really, we have a lot more issues than the smaller cities out in the country, and the smaller cities in the rural areas of Colorado, which are getting a lot of this money. So the Metro Mayor's Caucus penned a letter to them, making that asking for the sponsors of the bill to make that a priority, and to also increase the amounts for metro planning organizations, so that it's not just money that's coming to the state for the state projects, but it's actually coming down to regional and metro planning groups, so that we can decide which projects we want to fund and which and whether it's going to be used for mobility or whether it's going to be used for fixing roads and bridges, how it's going to be used. So that letter's gone out, and we're working. It'll be interesting. The bill should drop this week. We're told the end of this week. It'll be interesting to see what it looks like in its final or its first version, I guess. Also, then a couple days later, we met with the full Metro Mayor's Caucus, and we adopted the recommendations of the Transportation Committee. Then on April 16th, we had a meeting of the Policy Committee of CML, and it lasted nearly all day. It was a very full agenda because there was a lot happening in the legislature. I wrote about some of these in the next crier that's coming out. Obviously, the tweaks to the body cam, the police bill. There's a lot going on with that one. And we'll see, things are moving fast, but and then a lot also on the Senate bill 62 that had to do with pretrial arrest and bail and eliminating bail for misdemeanors and some felonies. It's really come down now to almost everybody is opposed. Even the sheriffs at one time were neutral on it. They flipped, they've opposed. CML is opposed. The Metro Mayor's Caucus is opposed. The police chiefs are opposed. So it was a bill that was, been an ACLU priority for many, many years. So we'll see where it all goes. There may be some middle ground. The bill has actually gotten better as the discussions have gone on, and some of the worst provisions of it have been eliminated. But still, the core of it is there. And even communities like Boulder and Louisville are opposed to it. So it's the mayors, there's virtually no mayor or municipality that's in favor of this bill or even neutral on it. Then on April 16th, we had a meeting. Chris and I had, and I'll let the city manager talk about this a little more, a meeting with Andres Carrera of he's Hickenlooper's person on the ground here in Colorado. It was a good meeting. We talked about the Treasury guidance for the expenditure of COVID funds, broadband, sewer, and wastewater that are coming to us, like 1.4 million eventually. I think 700,000 this year, 700,000 next year. But we expressed our concern to him about making sure that there's flexibility to do that, to use it for broadband and make sure that it's money that we can actually put some good use. Looking forward tomorrow, I have Mayor's Munch with the mayors of our surrounding municipalities. And then this Friday, we have a full CML board meeting. We're going to again review all the recommendations of the policy committee and more, I think. And then also in the CML, they're having board elections in June. My term is up in June. I'd like to run again. I'm planning to run again unless there's, if everybody agrees to that, let me do that. Chris would need to write a letter. I'll need to write a letter. I anticipate continuing service on the budget committee in the CML, and I think it's a good thing for us to have, so we know what's going on there. So if that's okay with everybody, I will plan to do that, and that's my report. We can take maybe Councillor Blum. You want it? Can you hear us?
Yes, Mayor, I apologize for all the, yes.
I need it. They text. I need your phone. I can't turn the TVs on at all.
All right. I apologize. We've got an issue here with the internet, obviously. Question I've got, it's a quick question, and then I've got to go meet with this guy. But we talked about reports last time about getting a consultant in for doing an RFP to see if we want to get the public affairs consultants. Reading over the minutes, it seemed like there may be a consensus to do that. I don't know if Chris has gotten any direction on that, but I just want to bring that up again. Are we going to go ahead and have the staff go out with an RFP to see if we can get some proposals from these public affairs consultants? So that's my question rather than a report.
Chris, I don't know if you want to address that.
Yeah, I think when we came out of the last meeting there, I didn't really hear any opposition to it. I think we were going to go ahead and start planning on doing that. But I guess I wouldn't go so far as to say that it was officially designated, here you go forward. So I certainly would appreciate.
Do you need right this minute? Or?
So if there is consensus on that, though, it certainly would help staff to know to go forward. I would suggest that it is something that we would likely try and get on the ground more this summer, like around the July timeframe, not necessarily something here in the early part of May or anything like that. But yeah, I would welcome the confirmation of that direction.
That was my understanding, was that we were going to move forward in the summer.
Okay, perfect.
Councilor Sheldon.
Thank you, Mayor. I only have one comment that I'd like to make tonight. I think I'm ready to get back to in-person meetings, and I don't know how the rest of you feel. I don't know who all's been vaccinated and who hasn't, who's had their second shots and who's been 2 weeks post second shots, but our staff is going back to work full-time in the building on May 17th. Yes. May 18th is our second meeting of the month of May. If it pleases the rest of council and staff's going to be ready for us, I'd like to suggest we get in that building for an in-person meeting starting on May 18th. Not the one at the May 4th, not our next one. Unless everyone's ready, I'd go do it then. But in order to give everyone some heads up, some timing to get ready for it, I'd suggest our second meeting of May, we get back in there. And really, I know hopefully most of us are feeling the same thing, that it's maybe getting to be time. I will tell you I have two thoughts on this. One, the other jurisdictions that I work in during my day job that are still out of their city halls, it's very frustrating as a member of the community doing business in those jurisdictions when I can't raise a person on the phone and I can't walk into City Hall to go talk to them. And I don't know that we have quite that level of walk-in traffic or necessary land use applications coming in and whatnot that I'm talking about in my business. But it's frustrating that you can't reach your staff on a regular basis. But more importantly for me, I miss the interaction. I miss seeing everybody. And I think that us all being together in person actually breeds better dialogue, better discussions. We talk about better things. We come up with more ideas and better ideas than doing this twice a month, what we're doing right now. My dialogue with each of you has been less since we've been online than it has when we were all in person prior to COVID shutting us down. So for those reasons, I'm going to propose that we go back to work in the City Hall chambers on May 8th.
I'm glad you raised that, Councilor Chung, because I forgot to, and I wanted to too. And let's let everybody comment on that as well. We did take a poll at the Metro Mayor's Caucus and asking, and everybody there is planning to be back in June. I mean, that's kind of what everybody now is not in person. There are a couple who are in person just for their council, but not for the public. But most of them are still doing Zooming for both. And it was, I guess you would say, a consensus around the room, around the Zoom, that people are thinking that June is the date that most of the municipalities are going to go back to. But I take your point, and I think it's, we will be open City Hall back in early May, as you know. So I'd like to hear what everybody else thinks, but I support that as well. So.
I've had both my shots, and it's been, gosh, I don't know, about 4 weeks since the last one. I feel like I can leap tall buildings at a single bound. So I'm all ready to go. And I do think the quality, it's not to take anything away. I think we did what we had to do under the circumstances.
Right.
And we're wise and prudent. But I do think the quality of the dialogue will just click up another notch, and that's a good thing.
I agree with Dan. You miss a lot of it. You miss a lot of discussions if you can't. I agree with that. And you're suggesting, Dan, not just council, but also the public to be back in the council chambers.
I think so. Yeah, and listen, May 18th just happens to coincide with the week that we're opening City Hall to our staff on a full-time basis. So if I would think that there's some nexus there, some synergy for having our staff go in the building on Monday. Sorry?
To clarify, staff has been back at greater numbers. The May 17th date is the date that we're opening the doors to the public.
I see.
That's really the
Okay. I think certainly if our staff is back in May already and we're opening to the public, I just think it makes some sense for us to get back. And Mayor, if the consensus amongst the community is that June is the time to do it, I don't, whether it's May 18th or June 2nd or whatever that first meeting of June is, I don't know that I really care all that much. I just think it's time that we set a date and try to start targeting getting back into the building.
Good, a good comment.
Mayor, can I build on what Councilor Sheldon
let's
said?
go down. I'd like to go down and just do it systematically here and see what everybody says about Councilor Gallagher. What are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, I do think it's important to get back, but I do think it's also important that everyone's vaccinated before they walk into that building. That would be my comment on that. And then second comment is let's make sure we keep the ball rolling on Quincy Farms RFP. There was no discussion on it this evening. It's really important that we get that thing going. That's the end of my comments.
Mayor Pro Tem Brown?
Yeah, so for my report, I just would reiterate what the mayor mentioned about the First Universalist Church. That's a concerning issue in this part of the village. And if you're able to attend the Zoom meeting tomorrow, I think members of the community would appreciate a Cherry Hills Village presence, even though it's a purely Denver issue and decision. But I think our community would like to see our community represented as much as possible. In terms of meeting back in person, I completely agree with Councilor Sheldon. And I'm going to make a personal confession that it's occurring to me that it's been a year that I've really had to schedule around council meetings. And I'm realizing now that I will be out of town for both of the council meetings in June. I would be able to participate via phone, but I will not physically be here in person. I just haven't been factoring that into my planning. But you know, it's not about one person. It's about generally. And so I would say in general, I agree. I think that we're much more effective as a body when we're in the room together. It's just easier to have a meeting that way.
Councilor Wheel. Report. Thoughts?
Yeah, no report, nothing all that relevant going on at Dr. Cog, big stuff, but nothing all that relevant. I think maybe to build on Katie's point, perhaps, we can set a date where we all want to come back and have live meetings. If for some reason one individual or travel plans or whatever it might be get in the way, I don't know that it would be, maybe it would be a problem, but I think attending a meeting in Zoom where one person does and everybody else is live, sort of a hybrid meeting, seems like it could work. So there may be a way to accomplish both.
I will just remind you, Randy, and I don't know if this has changed, if Colorado Open Media or our technology folks have maybe improved on it, but the one time we tried to do it and I was holding, when we were sitting in council chambers and I was holding my cell phone up to the microphone and trying to get Al or whoever it was that was called in, it was brutal at the time.
Okay.
Dan, this is Al. I think one time you did come in Zoom and it worked fine. Here's my question. I think it's a good idea. I think we all need to be together. My question, I guess, for Chris is, I think we need to have some rules laid out at that point what the rules for people coming in to attend the meeting, whether it's all masked, whether they have to be tested, or whether they have to get their temperature taken. I'm less concerned about all our council members, and I've been vaccinated for several months now. But being the parent of an ER doc who we've got our grandkids now, and they're double masked when they get on a flight. I'm concerned about people coming in that may not be masked. And, I see that unfortunately in a lot of places. But I think as long as we've got our rules, Chris, for people attending the meeting, that they are masked and we follow all the other protocols, I think it is time that whether it's May 18th or whether June, like the mayor suggested with the other communities, that we do get back together again. And the other question I've got, does Tri-County, have they issued any rules on this now as to whether we can have in-person meetings or limits on that?
Yeah, it's my understanding that, we're per Tri-County, we are in the blue. And so we, based on the occupancy of council chambers, we would be able to meet in person. I think that's why almost everybody that the mayor is referring to, there's all this sorts of city manager listserv emails floating around. It does seem like June is the target date for most cities. I think the real dilemma for a lot of cities is how to handle the hybrid nature of those meetings. Is there Zoom and in person, or is it only via Zoom that people can participate? I will tell you that there are some smaller cities that are struggling, and I would probably put us in this category with handling both in-person and Zoom public participation. There's an administrative and technical aspect of that can be challenging. So I would say on that front, let us talk internally about audience participation and what the right format of that might look like. And we can get back to you. We certainly can put some size limitations on the number of folks that are in the audience. There's not going to be any Tri-County limitations on it, but we could have our own, certainly.
Thank you.
City Attorney.
Just a quick reminder, right now your electronic participation meeting policy requires that quasi-judicial proceedings be held entirely in person or entirely virtually, so that communications and credibility and testimony and evidence can all be. So that's the way it stands right now.
Okay. And then Councillor Safavi.
Yeah, so no reports, but I want to go ahead and address the in-person meeting. I think there's no doubt that, if we go ahead and meet in person, it's more effective. I do actually miss coming and getting a free dinner, spend some time with everybody. But here's the reality. The fact that you're vaccinated, I'm in the midst of all these vaccination and the PCR and everything else. The fact that you're vaccinated, it doesn't mean that you're immune against the new strains that are floating around. That's one. The second one, that's the reason you get actually Moderna and Pfizer are coming up with and not a vaccine yet. So they're going to be a third one that we're going to get all of us sometime. It tells you that because they know things are not going to go ahead and just be all happy and dandy with what we all have been vaccinated for. With that being said, and also if you look at even from a middle school to colleges, they have a detailed protocol that they're following, and they're basically anybody that is coming in person, they get their PCR test done. They basically are once somebody exposed, they know, okay, you guys were in the same room. Everybody got to go get a PCR test before they come back. I want to make sure that the idea of getting together, it's great, regardless of if we're going to have mandate to wear a mask or not. I'm going to be wearing a mask. But I want to make sure that we say pros and cons. What are the advantages and disadvantages? How much risk do we put ourselves in by meeting in person versus doing Zoom for a bit longer? I'm not saying that if we go from Zoom to the in-person, I will not show up. I will come and I will wear the mask, and I'll be 99% chance we're going to be safe. But I would ask city manager, if we're going to do this, just like the universities and the schools and the businesses that are running with people in person, we need to have a detailed protocol that if somebody's positive and we're already in the vicinity, we need to notify everybody. We need to set up, people need to go get PCR tests before they come back for the next meeting. There's more involved. That's all. Back to you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councilor Savabi. City Manager.
Good evening, everyone. So just to close the loop on that conversation, then, is there overall council support for going back in person, and do we have a date specific? The May 18th? Seems like it. Okay. We will work on some additional protections. I think there are sign-up sheets. We would want to have thermometer available for folks. There's some things, some safety, common sense safety precautions that we can take to allow some in-person visitors to those meetings. Unless I hear from council folks with concerns, though, I do think it probably makes sense to let the public come. It's not like we have, just on a regular reoccurring basis, a huge room. So we are working on Councilor Gallagher, as council directed, a follow-up conversation on the RFP with Mayor Pro Tem Brown and Councilor Wheel. I believe that meeting is set. I would have to go back and look and see when that, but we were, and Laura, I believe we were able to get that set, correct? Yeah, so we are able to keep that ball moving forward.
It's next week.
Next week, there we go. Related to the council going back in person on May 18th, boards and commissions are also having conversations similar to that. I can tell you that we did just an informal straw poll with the P&Z. They are ready to go back in person in June, so unanimously. So I think if we do start thinking about this, just be aware that boards and commissions may start meeting in person as well. And I think that's appropriate. There was an interesting thing. I'm not going to put council on the spot tonight, but I would like you to start thinking about this and maybe get some feedback from you at the next council meeting. I think there is some, with COVID continuing to delay some of the activities that have everything. The 75th committee does, or at least there's a member or two who are wondering if there still is council support for moving forward with 75th anniversary event. So I'm not going to put you on the spot tonight, but just think about that, and we might have an opportunity. If anybody has any, there's nothing behind the scenes or other information other than just the fact that time has gone on, and it's now the 76th anniversary. And at what point does it become too long? I think they still have a tremendous amount of interest in doing it. I think just a board member or two wanted to just check in and make sure council was still supportive.
Is there a date, Chris? Do we have a date already pinned down in mind, or is it summer? Has it been dubbed a summer thing, or don't know?
And Director Sager's on this call to chime in any more than I have, but I think they've been on hold waiting. I mean, talk about an elective or sort of a totally, it is not crucial in any way. And so I think they are trying to make sure that doesn't happen until it's all ready to go and free and clear from a COVID perspective. And so that really does put the date further down the line. I don't think they have any specifics picked out at this point.
And to answer what City Manager Kramer said, they don't. They intended to have an event in July, a big gala event. I don't know that we're going to be able to pull it together in time for a July event, especially with all of the restrictions for outdoor events right now. We do have a meeting tentatively scheduled for the end of April that might get pushed into May because there have been no changes with City Hall as far as opening and all of that. So maybe they might start looking towards November, since there aren't any real activities scheduled in November.
Chris, I happen to be watching a video. Can you hear me okay? I'm a little.
Yeah, you sound much better now.
All right, a little nervous about this microphone. But anyway, I was watching a TV show actually, and embedded in there was a clip of Greenfield Village Days. And giant party. I mean, got all kinds of stuff going on. And I got to thinking about it, and somewhere between COVID fatigue and just having a big blowout feels like a good thing to do. I mean, I'm not exactly a party person, but at the same time I say that, it'd be nice to get the community together I'm not sure I'd wait as far as November. I'm not sure I'd want to be too close to current time because we're not out of the woods yet on COVID. But I could support it, that's for sure.
Well, and I think there's opportunities for community-wide events. If we had time tonight in the study session, we were going to just start maybe talking to council about special events in general. The 75th anniversary gala will likely be, obviously you'll purchase a ticket for that, and it won't necessarily be quote unquote open to everybody in the community. I do think there's opportunities for some of our movie nights and other things that are obviously easier and for anybody to sort of drop in on that might provide some of that benefit that you're referring to. So, I wouldn't want council to put all their eggs in the basket of the gala to fulfill that need to bring the community together. I don't want to misrepresent the committee, and Jessica, please help me out. I don't think anybody there is wanting to start taking the foot off the gas. I think they just want to make sure that council's still on board with moving forward with the activities. That's all.
Can I ask you a question, Chris? In terms of, we haven't got the sort of a public together, for example, to review the master plan, right? That we were intending to review last year and then this year because of the safety reason. I worry a little bit that, we're going to get folks together because of gala, but if we're not going and getting all the public together to discuss the master plan, you see what I mean? I'm not saying we should not do it, but it just is one of those things. We got to get our priority right. I know, and I'm okay with, to plan it, but make sure that our fund, whatever money we put in there, is refundable. Because I might be the only pessimistic guy with all the data I see that things are not going to be handy and dandy. So with that being said, I'm all for it. I'm all about partying, Randy. Let's go and get out and party. But I'm telling you, it's we got to do this cautiously, safely, because CDC still comes up with all kinds of regulations. It's just we're in some unknown territories. And I would say, if we're going to get the public together, let's think about also getting them together for a master plan and other things that we need the public input. That's all. Back to you.
No worries. And related to that, Councilor Savavi, great timing. That's part of the reason we were asking P&Z about meeting in person in June, because we're also going to then at the June meeting ask them about the master plan and more specifically the Citizens Advisory Task Force. And when do they feel it's okay to get a group of closer to 30 people together? So that's on their agenda for June. So stay tuned for that. I know this, apparently I've learned that this is a regular occurrence and it may seem pedestrian and ordinary. However, I just want to take a moment and hats off to the police department. We were named one of the safest cities yet again, apparently, an honor that we receive quite frequently. But I think it's important to still take a moment to recognize that doesn't happen without a lot of work. So congratulations, Chief. For the Denver Universalist Church application, after this meeting ends, I'll send out a little information sheet, a sheet prepared by the church that has the login information for tomorrow night. Myself and Paul Workman will be a part of that call for tomorrow night. There are a bunch of parameters and things that they are planning on doing that you'll see on this sheet. But more importantly, I think this is Denver is not obligated to refer anything to us. We're going to be participating uninvited, so to speak, at a staff level. We'll probably also send in comments, uninvited comments as well. And we will definitely be passing along. We've heard from a number of residents who are concerned and have a lot of concerns about safety, security, impacts on the trail, the High Line, et cetera. And we're going to be passing those along to Denver, whether they ask for it or not. But I did include in the Friday update this last week, contact information for residents if they want to reach out to Denver directly. In some ways, I think that may be more effective than the city making some sort of formal statement that ruffles feathers. So,
hey, Chris, can I ask you a question on this before we jump to whatever next topic it is? I was under the impression that the city was not going to be taking an active position on the Denver Universalist Church parking issue, but now I'm hearing you're saying you're going to be submitting comments. Are you just
Yes.
being the vehicle to, are you being the vehicle to supply the city of Denver with the citizen comments that we
No,
receive?
We're recommending that residents, if they want to make specific concerns, that they reach out to Denver directly. We're going to be submitting a comment letter that raises concerns. However, I don't think we're going to go so far as to have a formal opposition to formally come out. And I will tell you, in working with and being a referral from the city and county of Denver for 25 years, dynamics with Denver and its for inner ring suburbs are very tricky, and us formally opposing it in some ways can inflame the situation more than we may be doing more harm to an ultimate goal if we came out and opposed it. With that said, I absolutely think it's critical that we reflect the concerns that we're hearing from our residents to Denver, so that there is no question about what our residents think. And so
have we heard any
feedback that we're walking, but
yeah, have we heard any feedback from our residents that are in favor of what Denver zoning administrator is going to be hearing tomorrow night?
Staff has not heard any, but I'm not sure if other council members have.
I mean, if council decided right now that maybe even against your recommendation that we wanted to take a formal position,
absolutely.
I assume you'd submit it if that's what the
100%.
decision we wanted.
I would recommend against it. I think it actually may do more harm than good, but make no mistake, if council wants to submit that kind of comment, we absolutely will.
I think there's an issue of timing too. I mean, there's been no submission yet. So this is really kind of premature. I mean, we really need to wait and see what the submission by the church is to the city. And then there'll be time to do it. So, it would be, at this point, it would be really premature to say we oppose it without even knowing what their conditions are, what they're going to do. So I would suggest.
I think,
haven't we seen the meeting tomorrow night is not a public hearing. It is just more like a neighborhood meeting that the church.
But they're not going to do a public hearing. My understanding is there will be no public hearing. This is a zoning administrator who's going to make a decision.
Right.
But they have to make a submission.
So, excuse
they
me.
have to make a submission though, and they haven't made the submission yet.
I think isn't it all happening tomorrow?
No.
So this is a multi-day, multi-week event that it's going to take place starting with tomorrow night's presentation from who to who?
Yeah, it's from the church to the community.
Correct.
Okay.
And
That's tomorrow.
will Denver zoning administrator be on that?
That's a good question. I'm not sure.
Okay, then I'm totally with you. At this point, I don't, even if we wanted to take a position, which I don't know that we do, but even if we wanted to, I think now is premature. Then I retract that. And then I don't know that we wanted to, but I think it's one of those, oddities where we're hearing staff who's got experience in this kind of processing and intergovernmental cooperation and what could or could not, what may or may not be good for our city, advising us, but we're also I'm hearing pretty distinct chatter out there in one direction. And it's only in one direction about this proposal.
No, Dan, I think you're absolutely right, Dan. And I guess I'm trying to tell myself what I tell people who come to me with problems or concerns, that, it has to be more than we don't like it. And I think particularly the dynamic between Cherry Hills Village and homeless parking, I think we really have to express our legitimate concerns. And the main area that that's resonating with me is that my constituents are saying, what are you, Cherry Hills Village, going to do then to protect me? And, what resources are you going to put behind patrolling the High Line. And as they're saying this, I'm thinking to myself, we don't have the resources to potentially do any of that. And so I think those are the kinds of questions that the city legitimately can and should raise to say, you know, our residents are looking to us to provide. It's not just a question of, if you read that memo when Chris sends it out, you know, they talk about Denver police will be available to respond to your concerns and questions. Okay, well, what about, are they going to respond to Cherry Hills Village residents' concerns too? Because we're only 100 feet away? I don't think so. You know, so that's where I think it starts to, like, yeah, you may have your resources lined up, but nobody's talked to us about what resources are going to be required on our end to provide that same level of service to our residents.
I think there's a way to phrase a comment letter that hits on specifics like that very, very easily.
So is the comment letter that you're proposing that will go into tomorrow's file, into the meeting tomorrow?
No.
No, it would go in when they actually have some sort of, This is just a question. Tell us what you're proposing and tell the community, right? The community at large.
Okay.
You tell us what
I have a question for our city attorney, Kathy. Do you, does this fall at all? Let's just roll this forward a week or a month, and it's the city of Cherry Hills does not want to, for whatever reason, because it's stretching our resources too far, or whatever it may be. We're not in favor of the proposal that we're going to hear tomorrow night on this Zoom. Does any opposition that we would put forth put us in any jeopardy as it relates to RLUIPA?
You know, that's a really good question. I don't know that it would, because that specifically pertains to land use regulations, right? So I think the bigger picture is what you're hitting on is freedom of religion and expression as being a fundamental tenet of our government, and being concerned about and sensitive to that. But I don't believe it would be a direct violation of RLUIPA.
Even if the zoning administrator is the one who's making a determination, that sounds to me like land use.
But yes, but not Cherry Hills Village zoning administrator. This would be Denver regulations, interpretations, application.
Councilor Sheldon, this whole part of this whole thing, there's a minority of the folks are going to be interested in this. It's fascinating because it's my understanding, and I hope to find out more tomorrow night, they are authorizing this under the emergency powers that came from the COVID emergency declarations. In some ways, that has a different impact on, because it's not a permanent zoning change that they're getting. So in some ways, a lot of the RLUIPA considerations that Denver would have, not us, but Denver would have, are not as pressing as they might be were they changing a zone district or zoning rules applying to a zone district.
It'll be interesting to watch. I'm going to definitely tune in tomorrow.
Yeah, I'll send that sheet out that has the Zoom information as soon as we're done here.
And just a little more context and background. We've heard that there's a lot of opposition, obviously, from Denver neighbors, right, who are there. However, Councilmember Black is supportive of this. So just so you know.
I had a chance.
I'm sure she'll be on the Zoom too, or she should.
I assume so. I did have a chance to speak with her. I don't believe she's taking a formal stance either.
Okay.
But I think she is understanding and recognizes a lot of the benefits that the program brings. I'm being very careful with my wording here.
Chris, part of if you look at, and I've actually talked to Councilman Black about this issue, in the past, and here's the thing. I don't think there is any place in Denver, I'll make a general statement, that they initiated a program of allowing, the homeless to gather and stay, which it did not overgrow and it did not go out of control, and it really creates in a way, a public safety hazard from a perspective of health, sanitary and health. And so, if this moves forward, I hope we can go ahead and at least put some boundaries around it, that if, you can rezone it, but if it doesn't meet, parameter A, B, C in terms of sanitary, the number of people you have per square foot, I don't know what it is, that those things need to be monitored and not to get, not go the way the rest of the city in Denver has gone in some areas. Anyway, you guys know better than I do in terms of the policies and regulation and what needs to be done. But this is going to be a huge challenge, I think, for us. And I think what I can tell you is that I did receive one email from one of the residents that I believe she had, it came to us all as BCC. So I have to make an assumption that this email in opposition came to a large number of the people in the village, and I was one of the people that was included in the BCC list. So that's all. Back to you.
There are a couple.
Can I add a couple of things really quickly? Just maybe a couple of bullet points that you all might not know about this particular program and that I received from one of their board members. I reached out, and I also reached out to the commander of District 3. With regard to the numbers, they're talking, this is the way I've understood it so far, they're talking about 8 vehicles, total of 16 individuals, no children, that this would serve the current area. In other words, there's probably people already in this area that are in need maybe of something like this. So this would not be advertised in North Denver or Broomfield or something that, hey, this spot is opened up, everybody come down to this particular church. It's supposed to serve a specific geographic area. They will be doing vetting on criminal backgrounds. There will be no sex offenders allowed, no weapons, drugs, or alcohol. This is by permit only. It's a permitted program, much like Chris said, that it's under the auspice of the emergency guidelines with regard to COVID. Of course, being the chief, I wanted to ask about if they had any data with respect to criminal activity at these sites. The person I talked to said they were only aware of one, and it was in Longmont, and it was a domestic violence issue. I did not ask for the report. I would suspect 2 people living in a car maybe had a bad night, but I don't know. With regard to crime then around the area, they didn't have much data. There was one inquiry in the Broomfield area, but apparently that was not found to be in having this area or this parking program involved. It could have possibly been some other neighbors in an apartment complex. So there are, and then my understanding is that they have access to someone at the facility 24/7. There will not be quote unquote security, but it would be under the auspice of the Denver Police Department, obviously. So just to add a few things that maybe folks did not know about that I was told about. I don't know if that helps or not, but some of the things that they're doing seem to be, in the right direction, but that's not my call to make.
Thank you.
I know that there are a few of these sites in other places, and I guess I would be curious. I don't think it's a big number from what I read. I think it's in that letter I read. There's like a handful. I would be very curious how many of them, if any, are directly on a border with another municipality.
I don't know the locations, so I wouldn't have any info about that.
And I guess that might be, if anybody, is in a position to talk to somebody who would know, that's an interesting, I think, perhaps difference between this and other installations, because again, what it comes down to for me is that you've got different municipalities responsible for providing different services to their constituents. If it's in the middle of Denver, then Denver's responsible for all of it, and it's their decision, and and it's their decision no matter what. I totally respect that. But it's an interesting consideration that this decision may also create some burden on a neighboring municipality.
I agree. So we'll report back when we have more information, especially after tomorrow night. I would look for an update in the weekly report email this Friday with how that goes. That was the last update I had. I know that I have a couple of staff with some updates as well. Jay, do you want to go next?
Sure, I've got a few quick updates. Sewer project is going well. Of course, the weather has been slowing us down, but we are moving along on the east side of town with the trunk line. We continue to pressure XL on the undergrounding. The problem, as I mentioned a few months ago, XL did not do any coordination with the other utilities, Comcast, CenturyLink, Crown Castle. So now instead of having to do bores every 50 feet as they are, test holes every 50 feet as they bore, they're now having to do test holes every 10 to 15 feet because the other utilities took the only clear line that was left in that right of way. So we continue to push them, but they're talking the end of May if there's no weather. We will continue to push them forward, but it's going to be a few more months before we see that cleaned up and finished in there.
And
That's all I
that
have.
was if there's no other setbacks like weather or knocking out a Crown Castle line or anything like that.
Yes,
right?
correct.
So that's an optimistic outlook.
Yeah.
There should be a lesson learned out of this, right? I don't know that there's anything we could have done differently as far as the public utilities and making sure that they had their ducks in a row before they go out there and start trying to get it done. And I don't know if there's anything, I mean, at some point, if it's not surveyed in, I guess, Jay, it's just, they've got to do it this way, right? They got to go out and start poking holes every 10 feet to see where those conflicting utilities are.
Well, and the conflicting utilities weren't there when they designed it because the other utilities
They designed,
were on the pole.
Wait a minute, when they designed the original.
Yeah, when XL went in and did their design, there was no utilities in their way because they were on their poles. But I believe if we continue to be able to do undergrounding, that we need to sit down with the utilities and make sure they are coordinating, not leave the coordinating up to them, but bring them all to the table and say, you guys all need to, before anybody starts digging, pick your lines and stay in those so everybody can do this in an orderly fashion and not make it such a hard process.
You would think that the added cost and the schedule impacts and everything else that they are incurring would be motivation enough to be more coordinated on the front end. Like it's benefits them directly. Apparently not.
So you bring up a good point though, Chris, you bring up a good point. I assume we have a guaranteed max price contract.
Yes.
Yeah.
Fixed.
Yeah.
Yep. Ours is a fixed price.
So, but
Okay.
yeah, I agree with Jay. We have, we need to press them because apparently we need to help them help themselves.
Right. If we go do another half mile stretch, whenever that may be, to have this happen again, shame on us if we allow this to happen again, like it's happening right now. We need to do everything we can to help them help themselves.
Well, you know that now the price just quadrupled, right? I mean,
probably so.
They're like, we really underbid that.
Unless it's a different set of dry utilities underneath, as we head further west through the village. Which it may be. It may not be as bad on the other side of that entry into the neighborhood. I don't know.
I don't know. I still think it just quadrupled for anything else in the future.
All right, director's report still. Director Sager, did you have something? Or?
Thank you, Mayor Stewart. I do not have a report tonight.
Okay. And Chief, anything in addition? I want to.
No, sir. Thank you. Nothing else.
Very good. And City Clerk, Laura.
No report, thank you.
All right, City Attorney.
Real briefly, we're waiting to hear back from Comcast on the franchise agreement. I'm monitoring MOU development for proceeds from the outcome of some opioid litigation. I'll be working with the city staff on that. I know they're in the loop on that as well. And post-vaccination for me officially is Thursday, and I'll be out of the office for 2 days. So actually for 4. So, well, through the weekend. So just FYI, my firm stands ready to help staff by one, let you guys all know. So thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Anybody else before we, anything else for the good of the meeting? Thank you all. It's a good meeting, good study session, good meeting. Thank you all. And congratulations, Chief, for the foundation. Yeah.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night, everybody.